Hey guys, welcome back to the AJ Analysis channel, where today I'm going to try and answer that question which is in the thumbnail of this video. How bad is it? Or how bad was it? And don't worry, when we actually break it down, you'll see that it wasn't as bad as some people might think. Of course, you lose 2-0 as Manchester United away at Tottenham Hotspur. You fear the worst. You think the team's in a really bad place. I don't think it was as bad as the scoreline reflects. I think United should have won this game. I think in the first half we saw a lot of positives. In the second half it was a mess and there are still clear underlying problems. Today we're going to break it down using the tactical board, so let's get into it. So before we continue into the video, a quick shout out to today's video sponsor, JerseyFIFA.com, the home of all of the greatest football kits. Whether that be the new latest releases or the old classic ones like this, Jersey FIFA has something for everyone, and now you can check it out yourself using the link in the description down below. And also make sure to use code JerseyFIFA for 10% off when you order. So the way we're going to do this today is really break it down into two halves of football. And of course, obviously we'll start with the first half, where Spurs look to build possession from the back in a 2-3 shape, with the two centre-backs splitting like this, Basuma dropping deep, Porro and Udogie moving really narrow like this, and this was the Spurs build-up structure. And initially, for the first 30-35 minutes of the game, United done a pretty good job of stopping this. And the reason for this was because the narrow fullbacks of Spurs kind of suited United's dodgy pressing system. It meant that United could do this, go man for man in midfield like so, and kind of restrict the options on the ball for Spurs, stopping them from playing the ball forward. Now, despite this working for the majority of the first half, 9 times out of 10 it worked, there were situations when it didn't work, and it was because of this. When the ball goes to Van de Ven, Marcus Rashford is going to come across. Marcus Rashford isn't a very good pressing striker though, in the way which he cuts angles, etc. Meaning that the ball can often then be played backwards, so if the goalkeeper then goes to the other centre-back, you start to see questions. And it's the same problem United always have with their press. Garnacho now gets drawn out, two players can do a nice little bit of movement for Spurs, and now Mason Mount is in a situation where there's one of him, two of the opposition. So this is still the same problem with the United press. The fullback or the centre-backs are still not connecting to the press, leaving United with issues where at times teams can do this. Just play the ball nice and simply, work the overload, and then get at the exposed defence. Someone like Casemiro gets pulled across, Maddison's then free, then we're going to see Son making a run. You can kind of see what I'm talking about here. So quickly, just with a couple of passes, the United press can be beaten too easily. Despite that, for large parts of the first half, Spurs didn't really exploit that, and United's man-to-man press was pretty effective, and United won the ball back in some really dangerous areas high up the pitch, particularly off Pedro Porro, who was inverting into this position. Mason Mount, Garnacho done an excellent job of jumping onto him, winning the ball back, and United have some really good opportunities from here. They're in really very, very decent positions. So, it's not too bad from a defensive point of view in the first half for United. For example, someone like Richarlison didn't really get into the game. Of course, like we've said already, Spurs had that occasional chance where they play through the team, play through the press. But in general, United weren't too bad out of possession in the first half. Now, I specify first half because in the second it was a different story, but we'll come on to that later. Because for now I want to talk about United in possession in the first half. Because, again, I didn't think it was too bad. I thought United done a pretty decent job. They used a better goal kick structure. Let's just move everyone back into position. United started with a better goal kick structure. Rather than this weird system where Luke Shaw comes in here, we saw Lisandro Martinez drop in, we saw Rafael Varane do the same, Casemiro is going to drop in, and also Mason Mount to an extent as well, which almost leaves United in like a 4-2-3-1 shape like this. Spurs are going to press in a 4-4-2 system with Maddison moving forward, and as a result, we can see that United will have overloads in these deeper areas of the pitch. It's still not the ideal structure in my opinion, but United were able to play out. The annoying thing from my point of view though, is that whilst United's kind of build-up structure is better in these areas, there are still times where you need to go long. For example, Spurs may be outnumbered, but there will still be situations where you can put Onana under pressure. We know that he's a really good long passer. The problem with this starting 11 is, who do you really aim for? Because you've got Anthony, who is never going to win this kind of duel against Udogie on this side. It's just not going to happen. Fernandes is never going to beat Basuma physically. Garnacho is never going to win a battle physically. And Marcus Rashford doesn't even bother attempting headers in these areas, which is poor from him. I don't expect him to win these battles, but a bit of effort would be nice. And we don't really see that from him. So, whilst I thought the build-up structure was good in general, it's frustrating that when you go long, there's nothing to aim for. Fortunately, I think signing Rasmus Højlund, and when he's fit and comes into the team, I think it will address that. So it's a slight concern at the moment, but don't worry about it too much in the long term, hopefully. Like I said though, in general, United were improved in the first half in possession. We also saw better connections when they were moving further up the pitch as well. We often saw one of the fullbacks dropping in once again, but the distances in midfield were much better. Last week against Wolves, we saw Fernandes and Mason Mount pushing way too high, and even Casemiro at times really, pushing way too high up the pitch. We didn't see that as much in this game. And instead what we saw was Mason Mount in particular playing much deeper, forming at times almost a 2-4 shape like this. But it gave United that connection point in the team which they lacked last week. Mason Mount could get on the ball and actually move the ball forward. And again, in the first half, I thought United done this quite well. It also gave United a better balance when they lost the ball, because Mason Mount was a little bit deeper, he could recover and help Casemiro. Casemiro also wasn't playing as daft as what he has done recently, he wasn't pumping the ball forward. The team was looking decent, retaining the ball, and from here you can of course move forward. The big threat was Garnacho on the left hand side coming inside. He still didn't have a great performance, but what we at least saw in this game was Luke Shaw given the licence to push further forward, get on the overlap. And there were situations where he'd get the ball here, and he's going to look to cut the ball back into the box. This was a big threat. United got into some really good opportunities and, genuine chances from this position, but there's just a lack of movement in the middle. This team needs a number 9. Rasmus Højlund could be it. I don't want to put too much pressure on him, but he could be it. This team lacks that number 9. Another day, United scored 2 or 3 goals in this first half with their attacking football. They genuinely looked really dangerous going forward. Whether it's Luke Shaw or Bruno Fernandes crossing from this position here, Marcus Rashford missed an absolute sitter. Might have been offside, but it's still a sitter. And Bruno Fernandes as well, definitely onside, misses a huge opportunity with the header. And United were also denied a blatant penalty. I must have missed the rule where you can put your hand up here to slam dunk a shot and block it. It's a blatant penalty for United, not given. But I genuinely think another day United could have been 2-0 up in that first half. They were by far the best team. It's the best 45 minutes United have produced in some time, including pre-season. United were, like I said, by far the best team. They were on top. Spurs were still having those moments where they could play through the press or get on the counter-attack, so concerns were still there, but in general, United were the better team. So the question is, what went so horrifically wrong in the second half? Now, I'll be honest with you, in my opinion, it doesn't take too much analysis as such to actually break down what went wrong. For me, it was 2 main things. The frailty, mentally, of this Manchester United side is a big problem, but also physically. Those were the 2 big problems that we saw. So Spurs get a goal pretty early in the second half, right? It's not particularly against the patterns of play we saw in the first half. It was just Spurs took their chance. Spurs took their opportunity, got a bit of luck with a deflection, which United didn't get in the first half. That happens in football. It's all about how do you react to that, though. Apparently you don't. These Manchester United players, I mentioned it in midweek, are mentally too frail. Their response when they concede is to abandon everything they've done well in the past 12 months. It happens every time. So what do we see when United concede a goal? Instantly, the ball starts getting pumped forward. We see Lisandro Martinez trying to play killer passes from centre-back. Do it occasionally, yes, but not every time. Luke Shaw's trying to do the same from left-back. Casemiro's going back to pinging the ball forward, but also making runs forward off the ball. Mason Mount suddenly pretty anonymous in the game. Bruno Fernandes getting the ball and trying to first time it forward every time, spamming balls forward. Constantly spamming crosses into the box as soon as you get anywhere near the final third. Luke Shaw is looping crosses towards the back post for Anthony to beat Van der Ven. It's so daft. Play the percentage pass. Keep the ball for your side. Keep the ball ticking over. But no, it doesn't happen. Anthony swinging crosses into the box. Fernandes, like I said, swinging crosses into the box. Rashford didn't see him in his second half. We just did not see him at all. It's silly from United. They played really well in the first half by being patient, building the ball out from the back, building through the midfield, using Casemiro, Mason Mount and Bruno Fernandes to progress the ball, then getting Luke Shaw on the overlap. It worked well in the first half. It genuinely did. Like I said, United should have had a few goals, but they just abandon the principles every time. They start pumping the ball forward, and that is a mental frailty. Now, also, what this does, when you have this mental frailty and you start losing the ball, overturning possession constantly, it then exposes United's physical problems. This is where, for me, there's actually a strength and conditioning problem. Football clubs hire specific strength and conditioning coaches. They're being paid more than they should at United because these players do not have the strength or conditioning needed to play in the Premier League. Now, to try and look at it from a positive point of view, or an optimistic point of view, maybe United are thinking it's a long season, we don't need to peak physically just yet. That's the only kind of hope I have from this. If not, United might be in for a long season. Because Bissouma, as the game goes on, like I said, first half was kept quiet. As the game goes on, completely overruns Bruno Fernandes, completely destroys him. Also, players start jumping in carelessly. Bissouma, all it takes is one drop of the shoulder like that, and Bruno Fernandes has gone 20 yards down the road to go get something from the shop. The same for Casemiro against Maddison. Casemiro is trying to go man-to-man for him. I don't remember seeing him get within 3 yards of Maddison in that second half. Spurs just suddenly, from a physical point of view, just completely took charge of this midfield. The United players looked shattered 60 minutes into the second game of the season. Casemiro looks like a bus through mud, basically, in this second half. He can't get close, but Bruno Fernandes isn't getting close either. He's trying to kind of anticipate on the press, completely getting it wrong, completely getting beaten. Too many little one shoulder drop is just selling this United midfield. Bruno Fernandes is the worst culprit for that. But Casemiro, like I said, also doesn't get close. Mason Mount physically was able to match Sarr for most of the game, but in general, his impact in the second half certainly waned. And as a result, United just get overrun in midfield. What happens when you get overrun in midfield against a really good possession side? You get beaten quite comfortably in the end. Spurs destroyed Manchester United in the second half. And that is why I have concerns. It's why I have big concerns. I don't think Ten Hag necessarily with the setup got it horribly wrong tactically. Like I said, in the first half, United should have been 2 or 3 goals up. From a pressing point of view, they were improved without it still being perfect. But in possession, it was a better structure. I still don't like the idea of Rashford up front. I've been saying it for 7 years now since he broke into the team. He's not a striker. He was United's best player last season, playing on the left wing. So why, 2 games into the season, have we not seen him play a minute on the left wing? It doesn't really make sense to me, because he's not effective up front at the moment. Just put him in his best position. You might get something out of him. Put Sancho up front, where he played really well in pre-season. Ten Hag doesn't seem to want to do that. So I've got questions for Ten Hag on that. But also, the strength and conditioning, like I said, the coaches at the club, they need to get a grip here. Because your team could not physically be done like that 60 minutes into the second game of the season. Not when the same happened in the first game as well. It's not acceptable. There's a worrying lack of athletes in this football team. There's players which can cover ground. Bruno Fernandes can cover ground. Anthony can cover ground. Mason Mount can. Wan-Bissaka can. We know that. But there's a lack of explosiveness to this United team. A lack of power to go shoulder to shoulder and beat, just win your duel. James Maddison could not physically beat Casemiro. That shouldn't be happening. There is a problem with this United team. Like I said, I also don't think Ten Hag got it tactically spot on. I think he should have impacted the game with subs sooner and made different changes. I also think, though, and again, I was saying it in midweek, he needs to address the mental frailty of this side. Because when you're mentally frail, you'll only get so far. You can have the most beautiful tactics. You can play the most scintillating goal-scoring football. But if you're mentally frail, it always means that when you face a setback, you're going to crumble. And that's where this United team is at the moment. When they face a setback, particularly away from home, where they concede a goal, they go back to old habits every time. They reset to default almost. It's suddenly get the ball forward, pump the ball forward at every opportunity, cross the ball into the box on the first touch. It just doesn't work because you're giving the ball to Spurs, you're opening up whilst doing so, and Spurs then have the physical but also the technical players which are superior to you, allowing them to play through you and, like I said, in the second half, tear United apart. So that's where I'm at for today's video. In terms of how bad is it, I don't actually know. In the first half, not bad at all. United were the better team, should have been, again, 2 or 3 up. And suddenly we're looking at this from a very different point of view. 6 points from the first 2 games. Lovely stuff. A big win away from home against a top side. Lovely, lovely stuff. But in the second half, those same underlying problems are there. That the team reacts poorly to setbacks, and that physically there is a problem here. That something needs to be addressed there. The strength and conditioning of this team isn't good enough. How do you fix that? Maybe with a signing, maybe with new coaches, better coaching, I'm not too sure. But it definitely needs to be fixed. What I would say to kind of sum up the game is don't overreact to this because United lost 2-0. United should have won this football match. They should have. There's no dressing that up. United in that first half should have had this game dead and buried. But they didn't. They didn't take their chances. So from a tactical point of view, we can say in the first half, Ten Hag largely got it right because United created those chances. In the second half, however, whilst we can say don't overreact, United should have won, there are deep lying concerns here that from a mental and physical point of view, the team isn't quite there. That's a problem, but that's a problem which only Ten Hag can sort out. I can't tell you guys how to sort that out in a video. This is something that he's got to fix, and the coaches have to fix. Maybe the transfer team have to fix. We will have to wait and see though. Those, I think, are my concluding thoughts for today's video. So thank you guys for watching. Whilst you may not have enjoyed the match, especially in the second half, I hope you enjoyed the video. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.